My name is Jade Williamson. I am 34 years old. I serve as a captain in the United States Army, Special Operations. Family Day at Fort Bragg was supposed to be about pride, protocol, and letting our families see what discipline actually looks like under the sun. Instead, my brother stepped onto my mat and lit a fuse. Weak soldier, my brother Jake mocked me, daring me to spar for fun. His 3 black belt friends burst into laughter. I just smiled. I did not even strike back. I simply dodged. Minutes later, all 3 of them were knocked out. My brother's face went from shock to pure terror. That is the part everyone will replay. That is the clip people will debate in their group chats. The moment a woman in uniform made 3 trained men hit the floor without throwing a punch. But it did not start there. It started when the word soldier turned into a slur in his mouth, when he made the uniform a prop, when he tried to make my rank a punchline. Mark lunged first. Leo followed. Trent circled. I breathed. I watched shoulders telegraph, hips betray balance, heels lift under pressure. I did not need to hurt them. I only needed to prove a boundary. Freeze there. 3 bodies down, my breath even, my stance clean. The camera catches me looking straight into the lens, as if I'm addressing a court. Cut to black. I am Captain Jade Williamson, 2 deployments, 3 Valor Awards, 1 operation the media nicknamed Silverhawk, without ever learning the names that mattered. I teach close quarters combat to people who do not have the luxury of losing control. In my world, striking first is not strength. Restraint is, precision is. The ability to end a fight without creating a war is. I never needed to prove anything to Jake. Not to the boy who failed his psych screening and never forgave a system that measured temperament alongside muscle. Not to the man who learned to humiliate first, so he would not feel small again. But when he dragged my name, my rank, and my unit into a public spectacle, when he turned our family day into a circus for a phone camera, that was when control had to look like consequence. Motif if you need one, control over violence. I live by it. I teach by it. I do not raise my voice when I can lower someone else's center of gravity. I do not throw a punch when a pivot will do. I do not escalate when I can define a line in silence. Family Day is what my unit calls transparency. Families watch us demo the drills their loved ones sweat through. There are rules, there is media, there is chain of command. Jake called it a boy vui, a family fun day, a playground. He arrived with 3 friends from his civilian gym. Mark the kickboxer, Leo the judo purist, Trent the Brazilian jiu-jitsu technician who actually studies before he speaks. I was going to let the insults pass. I had let them pass for 20 years. The girl he remembered crying on the school bus stayed living in his head long after I learned to break chokes with 1 breath and a hip shift. He poked the bruise he helped paint. The old story where he was strong and I was soft. He forgot that soft can become steel when it is forged in quiet. He said my medals were media. He said my rank was politics. He said real fighting lives in gyms, not on bases. He wanted a show. He wanted to prove that a black belt syllabus beats a battlefield's doctrine. He wanted to take my discipline and downgrade it to choreography. That was when Sergeant Hale looked at me. A slight nod, a reminder in his eyes. Uniform code of military justice. Keep your technique, keep your temper, keep it clean. I stepped on the mat with my boots off and my regulation shirt still tucked. I told the instructor overseeing the demo that I would not strike. I would only neutralize. He logged it. He stood to the side. The camera's red light blinked. I could feel it tracking every exhale. Mark came first. Forward pressure, chin high, shoulders tight. I lowered, angled, felt the air of his jab skim past my cheek. 1 grip at his triceps, 1 cut across his base, a pure redirect. He hit the ground with confusion, not pain. Leo tried to capitalize. Judo clinch, overhook search, weight dump. I pivoted, stole his underhook, folded his balance like a paper hinge, knee to the mat without impact. He tapped from position, not from damage. Trent moved differently. He did not commit his hips without checking my stance. He watched the way my heels never squared. He studied my breathing, slow, measured. The way we learn to breathe when walls explode and rooms blind you with dust. He feinted a shot. I let him feel space, then took it back. Collar tie off, wrist peel, ankle bite. He recovered. I saw his eyes drop to my left wrist where the cuff rides high when I rotate. He froze for a fraction. The small ink of a hawk's silhouette stared back at him. The crowd thought I was afraid because I never swung. They thought I was dancing away from impact because I could not handle it. But I was just listening to the way sneakers scrape when fear speeds feet, listening to how an audience goes quiet when certainty cracks, listening to my own heart rate refuse to spike. Spike here. Mark tries to cut the corner, I step through and sweep. Leo dives for a leg, I sprawl and roll him through his own momentum. Trent misreads distance for the first time and loses posture. 3 bodies, 3 lessons, 0 bruises I was not forced to create. I waited. I let Jake feel the silence rush toward him. Trent's eyes did what his guard could not. They reached deeper than the mat. He saw the hawk, not the bird, but the emblem. Operation Silver Hawk, the one article that never showed faces, the mission the military praised in abstractions, the night one of mine did not come back. I watched recognition hit him like a silent choke. He stepped back, not out of respect yet, but out of calculation. The math in his head was rewriting. He whispered, almost respectfully, "You were there." I did not answer. The camera was still rolling, the crowd was still hungry, Jake was still blind. I am the narrator. I could tell you everything now. I could tell you about the steel door, the stairs, the 5th hostage shaking in a room that smelled like gasoline and fear. But you do not earn that truth this early. Neither did Jake. Unreliable narrator. That is what you can call me if it helps you breathe. I will give you the facts when they matter. For now, you only need to know that Trent saw a story bigger than a Spar. And for the first time since he stepped in, he stopped trying to win and started trying to understand why losing gently might be his best victory of the day. We are back in the freeze frame. 3 men on the floor, not broken, just placed. My chest is still, my voice is level. Jake is standing with his mouth open, eyes wide, ego recalculating the size of the room. The applause is confused. They do not know whether to cheer for mercy or for mastery. I look straight at the camera, at the public record, at the future comment sections. I say clearly for the mic and for my brother, this is not revenge. This is the last boundary I will draw for you, in public, under the law. Cut to black. The question you should be asking is simple: which law? And how far will it go if he decides to cross it again? Fort Bragg is not a place where things vanish into thin air. Every drill, every demonstration, every careless word spoken within its gates can live forever in footage, reports, and archived files. Family Day here is far from a casual barbecue or a backyard party. It is a tightly structured event, designed to show civilians a controlled glimpse of military life. Large banners flap in the wind, displaying unit mottos and colors. A line of media crews stands ready with cameras and notebooks, documenting every maneuver and every handshake. Commanding officers walk the perimeter, greeting guests with measured smiles while watching for any slip in protocol. I know this environment like the back of my hand. One wrong step on a demonstration mat, one rash remark into a microphone, can ignite headlines that last longer than any applause. When my brother mocked me, I was not just standing before him. I was standing before the public record, the command hierarchy, and the silent judgment of my peers. This is why I kept my tone steady and my movements precise. Family Day is about pride and discipline, but also about accountability. Nothing that happens here stays private. A soldier's reputation is not just personal, it belongs to the uniform. And if you cannot control your emotions under a dozen cameras, you are not ready to lead anyone into battle. Jake was always my older brother, but never my protector. I grew up watching him demand attention through loudness and bravado, while I sought silence and precision. He hated silence. To him, it felt like losing ground. As kids, I was the quiet shadow trailing behind his noise. My earliest memory of Jake's contempt was on a school bus, when he laughed as I cried after a bully ripped my notebook. He never intervened. He simply smirked, proud to see me crumble. I carried that scene with me into adulthood, even after I learned how to defend myself. I once believed Jake's bitterness was just petty sibling rivalry, but there is more under the surface. Years ago, he tried to join the army. He failed not because of skill, but because of a psychological evaluation. He had a temper he could not hide, a coiled spring of anger waiting to snap. He told everyone it was the system's fault. He told me I was lucky because I knew how to fake being calm. What he never understood was that calmness was not fake for me. It was my survival strategy. When Jake saw me climb ranks and receive awards, he saw every door that had closed on him. I think that is why he mocks me so aggressively. I remind him of the path he never walked. But I also suspect, though I will not admit this to him, that he envies not my medals, but my control. Control is the currency of soldiers, and he never learned how to earn it. Jake's friends were not random faces dragged in for support. Each of them represented a different challenge, a different reading of my skills. Mark was the loud one, the kind who thrives on intimidation. He carried himself like a champion of every street fight he had ever won, with shoulders squared and a grin that promised cruelty. He was all offense, little defense, believing sheer aggression would overwhelm anyone. Leo, on the other hand, was quieter but calculating. He believed in technique, in the precision of a well-timed throw. I could see the skepticism in his eyes as he studied me, as if he thought I was just another soldier who learned choreographed moves instead of real combat. He wanted to test if military training could stand against years of judo practice. Then there was Trent. He intrigued me the most. He watched before acting, his movements economical, his posture balanced. He carried himself with respect for the art. Not just for the victory, there was a spark of curiosity in his gaze, like he wanted to learn even in the middle of confrontation. Facing them was not about proving that soldiers can beat martial artists. It was about showing how discipline, patience, and reading an opponent's rhythm can dismantle any ego-driven attack. Each of them forced me to adapt a different layer of my skill set. They were not pawns, they were mirrors reflecting what I could become if I lost my own control. On my left wrist, under the cuff of my uniform, there is a small hawk tattoo. Most people never notice it because I keep my sleeves rolled properly. But when I pivoted during the spar, the ink flashed under the lights, and Trent caught it. He hesitated, and I knew he had read something about Operation Silverhawk. The media romanticized it, calling it a daring mission where an elite team rescued 5 hostages from a heavily guarded compound overseas. They told the story of precision, heroism, and flawless execution. What they never told was that one of my team members, Sergeant Ellis, did not make it back. I was the commanding officer on that mission. I gave the order to breach earlier than planned because the enemy started executing the hostages. The mission was successful by every external measure, 5 lives saved, 0 civilian casualties. But I carry Ellis's last breath in my mind every night. That hawk is not a trophy. It is a reminder of the cost of leadership. When Trent's eyes flickered with recognition, I felt a tremor in my own chest. Not fear, but the memory of what it means to stand in a place where lives depend on your judgment. I do not brag about Silverhawk. I rarely speak of it, even to my family. Jake would not understand that success can taste like ash when someone you respect dies because of a call you made. That is why I keep my movements precise. Every motion, every pivot is in honor of Ellis and every soldier who trusts my decisions. I fight not to win, but to avoid unnecessary loss. Before the spar officially began, Sergeant Hale approached me. He has been my mentor for years, a man who can read my posture like an open book. "Captain," he said in a low tone, "are you sure you want to do this?" I nodded once, keeping my gaze locked on Jake and his friends. "I will not strike," I replied. "I will show them control, nothing else." Hale sighed, the kind of sigh that comes from someone who has seen too many young soldiers ruin their reputations with one reckless move. Remember, this is Family Day. The media is here, and UCMJ is not just a formality. It applies even when family provokes you. You understand? "Yes, Sergeant, I understand." My voice was firm but calm. I have faced live fire, hostile ambushes, and the chaos of war zones. A sparring match in front of civilians was nothing compared to that. Yet I also knew that one misstep, one punch thrown with anger instead of technique, could be more damaging to my career than any battlefield injury. Hale gave me a brief nod and stepped back, his presence a silent anchor behind me. I tightened my gloves, took a breath, and reminded myself that control would be my weapon today. Control and timing. As I stepped onto the mat, I asked myself, if things spiral beyond my intent, who will bear the weight? The answer was simple. It would be me. The noise of Family Day was already a mix of cheers, chatter, and camera shutters, but Jake knew how to cut through it. He grabbed the microphone set up for announcements and shouted, "What's the matter, Jade? Are you going to accept the challenge, or are you going to hide behind your shiny uniform?" His voice echoed through the training field. bouncing off the bleachers and reaching every corner of the crowd. Heads turned. The hum of conversation faded into a tense silence. I could feel the weight of dozens of eyes shifting from him to me. This wasn't a casual dare anymore. He had dragged my rank, my service, and my integrity onto the mat. Soldiers know when honor is at stake, and I saw the same realization flicker across the faces of my fellow officers. Jake smirked like a man who thought he had already won, holding the microphone like it was a weapon. "Come on," he added with a laugh. "If you really are as tough as everyone says, show these people. Or maybe you're just a weak soldier who looks good in pictures." The spike of tension was immediate. I felt my chest rise, not in anger, but in measured breath. In our line of work, anger is a liability. Still, I knew this had gone too far. He wasn't just questioning me. He was pulling the honor of my entire unit through the mud. I walked forward, closing the distance between us. I didn't take the microphone. I didn't need to. My voice carried well enough. "If I accept this," I said evenly, "it won't be a circus. It will have rules." Jake raised his eyebrows, mocking me with a smirk. "Rules? What kind of rules does a weak soldier need?" I ignored the bait. "If I win, you will apologize, not just to me, but to every person here. You will stand in front of this unit and admit that your words were nothing but noise. And after today, you will never use my past as a weapon against me again. You will stop dragging what I've lived through into your cheap jokes." He laughed, glancing at his 3 black belt friends for approval. "And if I win?" "You won't," I said. My tone wasn't arrogant, it was factual, like stating that the sun would rise tomorrow. "But if you think this is just about strength, you've already lost. This isn't about muscle or belts. It's about control." The crowd murmured, their curiosity sharpened into something like anticipation. Sergeant Hale stepped closer, ready to oversee the spar. "Agreed," Jake said with a grin. "But when I win, you'll admit you're just a soldier playing pretend." I stepped onto the mat, the texture of the surface familiar under my boots. I removed my jacket, leaving only the standard combat training shirt, and squared my stance. "I will not strike," I said loud enough for the crowd and Jake's friends to hear. "This is about leverage, not ego." Mark approached first, his shoulders rolling like a predator. His movements were big, predictable, full of force, but lacking subtlety. I read him like I'd read a battlefield map. His left shoulder dipped before every right punch. His balance shifted too far forward when he tried to grab me. I didn't need to counterattack. I simply pivoted, letting his own momentum betray him. He stumbled past me, frustrated. Leo was more cautious. He circled, looking for an opening. He attempted a clean judo throw, his hands gripping for control. I lowered my center of gravity, hooked my leg around his, and rotated my hips in one fluid motion. His attempt collapsed. I redirected his weight and eased him onto the mat with a controlled lock. Trent waited. He didn't rush, which I respected. I could see him observing every detail, the rhythm of my breathing, the angles of my knees and elbows. When he lunged, it was fast but measured. I slid backward, deflecting his grip with a sharp wrist turn, then spun out of reach. Through all of it, I kept my voice calm in my head. "This is not anger," I told myself. "This is training. Leverage wins wars, not raw force." The crowd started to notice. I wasn't hitting back, yet none of them could pin me. And for the first time, I saw doubt flash across Jake's face. In the middle of our brief standoff, Trent's eyes caught something. When I twisted to avoid his grip, my sleeve slid up just enough to reveal the small hawk tattoo on my wrist. His expression changed instantly. He froze for half a beat, recognition dawning like a sharp light in his eyes. You're from Silverhawk, aren't you?" he asked under his breath, his tone no longer cocky but hesitant. I met his gaze, my face steady and unreadable. I didn't answer, I didn't need to. The silence between us told him enough. Trent's stance shifted slightly, the aggression draining as respect replaced curiosity. He understood something that Jake never would, that the person standing in front of him had been through real combat, the kind that leaves scars you can't see. Jake, oblivious, shouted from behind, "What's wrong, Trent? She's not that tough." But Trent didn't reply. He was starting to see Jake's challenge for what it was, a foolish display of ego against someone who didn't need to prove herself. For the rest of the exchange, Trent's moves lost their full force. It wasn't fear, it was realization. He knew that continuing this fight as a game would only make Jake's mockery look worse. Mark, embarrassed from his earlier stumble, charged again, while Leo tried to flank me. Their plan was messy, born of frustration rather than strategy. I waited until the very last second, then moved. Mark's shoulder collided with the empty space where I had been. I grabbed his wrist, spun behind him, and redirected his weight forward. At the same time, Leo lunged for my legs, but I twisted, hooking his arm while stepping into a low pivot. Their combined momentum did the rest. Mark hit the mat with a heavy thud, and Leo collapsed right beside him. The audience gasped in unison. It had taken less than 5 seconds. No punches, no kicks, just precision. I stood straight, my breathing controlled, my pulse steady. My hands were open, palms relaxed. I didn't need to celebrate. The silence from Jake's side said everything. For the first time since this started, he looked unsure, as if the floor under his ego was starting to crack. The crowd, still stunned, waited for what would happen next. But I already knew this wasn't over. Not yet. 2 hours after the spar, I learned that Family Day had turned into something far bigger than a training demo. The military press office posted an official clip titled, "Exhibition of Control and Discipline," showing me redirecting the 3 black belts without throwing a single punch. The video was meant to highlight tactical restraint, an example of how combat training values precision over brute force. Within minutes, the video spread across the base network and then onto public platforms. But by the time I returned to my quarters, another version was already trending online. This one was edited by someone with an agenda. It cut out my opening statements, removed Jake's taunts, and pasted together clips of me flipping his friends with captions like, "Army Captain Humiliates Civilian Martial Artists." The tone was no longer about skill, it was about rivalry. Viewers who didn't know the context believed I had staged the entire spar to demean local fighters. Comments flooded social media, debates, insults, and praise tangled into one messy storm. Some called me a hero, others accused me of arrogance. I knew how quickly public opinion could twist the truth. One clip showed me bowing lightly after the match, a gesture of respect. Yet the edited version captioned it as mocking her opponents. The controversy had been planted like a seed, and seeds, once watered by outrage, grow fast in the digital world. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the image of the Army, my unit, and every soldier who wears this uniform. The next morning, Jake stormed into the visitor center with a printed complaint in his hand. "You made me look like a fool," he shouted. "This is everywhere, Jade. My phone won't stop ringing. Everyone's laughing at me. You ruined my name in front of the entire country." I remained calm, sitting across the table while he fumed. "No, Jake, you did that yourself when you mocked me in front of cameras. You wanted a show, you got one. Now you don't like the audience reaction." He slammed the papers down. "I'm filing a claim, emotional distress, public humiliation, whatever it takes. You think you can hide behind that rank of yours?" I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. This spar was officially overseen, recorded, and documented. Under UCMJ, everything was legal and supervised. You stepped into my world, Jake. You wanted to test me, and I made sure you walked out without a single broken bone. That's not humiliation, that's mercy. For a moment, he faltered, but his pride wouldn't let him stop. He gathered his papers and stormed out. I knew this wasn't just about the spar. It was about years of resentment, boiling over in the worst way. Later that evening, I heard a knock on my office door. It wasn't Jake, it was Trent. He stood there in plain clothes, no bravado, no competitive edge in his posture. "Captain Williamson," he said quietly, "I owe you an apology." I raised an eyebrow. "For what? You didn't mock me. That was your friend." Trent stepped inside. "When I saw that tattoo, I recognized it. Silver Hawk, right? I've read about it. I realized who you are. And I realized we were wrong to treat this like a game. Jake's pride blinded us, but you've faced things we can't even imagine." I leaned back, crossing my arms. "So what is it you want, Trent? To dig into my past?" He shook his head. "Not to dig, to understand, because someone like Jake will never see the battles you've already fought, the ones that don't end up on video clips. I want to tell him that not all victories can be measured in bruises or applause." His sincerity disarmed me. For a moment, I saw not an opponent, but a student. Someone who genuinely wanted to learn the difference between fighting and surviving. I nodded slightly. Then start by telling him that control is not weakness. It's the hardest skill of all. That night, alone in my quarters, I sat by the window and spoke, not to Jake, not to Trent, but to whoever might be listening inside my own head. I haven't told anyone this, not even my closest peers. During Operation Silverhawk, I lost control. The mission was a success on paper. 5 hostages freed, 0 civilian casualties. But we paid a price. Sergeant Ellis didn't return. I gave the order to breach too early because I feared we were running out of time. I replay that moment every time I close my eyes. The flash of gunfire, the radio call cut short, and the silence that followed. The tattoo of the hawk is not a badge of honor. It's a wound I wear where others can't see it. Every time I pivot or block, I remind myself never to let fear dictate my actions again. I tell the world I'm composed, but inside I'm always calculating, always second-guessing. People see a calm captain who neutralized 3 black belts without a single strike. They don't see the shadow of Ellis's face, the guilt that still tightens my chest at night. I'm no superhero. I'm a soldier who knows the cost of hesitation and the weight of responsibility. And maybe that's why I fight the way I do, quietly, with precision, as if one wrong move could cost another life. The next morning, the base's media director called me into her office. She was all smiles, the kind that come with numbers on a screen. "Captain Williamson," she said, "your clip has reached over 2 million views in less than 24 hours. We're getting calls from news outlets. This could be great PR for the Army." I stiffened. It wasn't meant to be PR. It was a Family Day demo, nothing more. "But the public loves it," she insisted. "A female captain taking down 3 black belts without striking. It's inspiring. We could launch a campaign, maybe even get you on interviews." I shook my head. No, I won't turn this into a spectacle. It was never about showing off. It was about control, about teaching that skill is measured by restraint. Turning it into a viral trend cheapens that lesson. She sighed, clearly disappointed. "At least consider letting us use the official version. The edited clip is damaging our image. We need your voice to correct the narrative." I paused, but then said firmly, "I'll speak when the time is right. Until then, let the video speak for itself. I don't fight for likes or headlines." The tension hung between us as I walked out. Knowing the storm online was just beginning. Tindon Nora Ganyungaliptuk. Someone inside public affairs juiced the numbers, leaked extra angles, and pushed the fight to civilian platforms to maximize reach. The name that kept surfacing was Sarah Kim, the junior media officer assigned to Family Day. Screenshots of her Slack messages, cropped, contextless, circulated among soldiers and spouses. "We should package this right. If the public sees restraint, they'll get it. People read intent into fragments. They always do." Sarah stood in front of me, pale but steady, and said, "Captain, I didn't leak anything beyond the approved cut. I posted the official clip to the base channels, nothing more." I believed her. The cadence of her voice sounded like accountability, not panic. But belief doesn't dissolve suspicion. The colonel wanted logs. It pulled traffic. Half-truths multiplied in private chats. A lieutenant swore he saw Sarah export a higher-res file onto a thumb drive. She swore it was a backup for the archive. Suspicion layered itself like bad lacquer. Sticky, uneven, impossible to peel clean without stripping everything beneath it. I told Sarah, "Until evidence says otherwise, you keep your head down and your records clean." She nodded, jaw clenched. I knew that look. It was the face of someone already on trial in the court of whispers. 2 days later, Jake called me from an unfamiliar number. His voice was smaller, like the room he was in had shrunk around him. "Jade, I need to tell you something before this gets worse." I waited. "I sent the video to a blogger," he said. "Not to trash you, to prove the Army isn't better than real fighters. I thought if people saw you in a controlled environment, they'd get it. But he cut it different. He made it look like you humiliated us." I didn't speak. Silence is a mirror. It forces people to see what they've said. Jake kept talking. "He told me controversy gets clicks. I didn't think it would blow up like this. I didn't think—" He trailed off. I could hear him breathing. "You didn't think, period," I finished for him. "You turned a family grudge into a public fire, and now you want me to put it out for you." He tried to defend himself. "I just wanted the truth. that the army isn't some sacred, untouchable truth? I cut in. You edited a narrative to serve your ego, and you got owned by the same game you tried to play. He was quiet again. What do I do? He finally asked. You own it, I said. You tell the truth publicly about what you did, and then you accept what comes after. Jake exhaled, a long, defeated sound. They're going to crucify me. You lit the cross, I replied. Stand under it. He hung up without saying goodbye. Guilt never ends with ceremony. The army does not care that he is my brother. It cares that a captain sparred civilians, under cameras, during an official event. The legal office convened a review board to determine whether protocol had been followed. Hale and the training officer submitted statements confirming the match had been supervised, documented, and controlled. No injuries, no escalation. Still, the board had questions. Why didn't I refuse? Why did I engage when taunted publicly? Was my choice strategic or personal? The Uniform Code of Military Justice is a backbone. It bends for no one. I sat straight, answered clearly, and took what was mine to carry. As the ranking officer on the mat, I accept responsibility for everything that happened there. I kept it clean, within training parameters, under supervision, but I could have declined the spectacle outright. I did not. That was my flaw. Not technique, judgment. The board chair, a colonel with a face like granite, nodded once. Your conduct remained within regulation. Your discretion, however, will be noted. Soldiers live with paper scars, memos, reprimands, entries in permanent files. I could feel the line of ink forming under my name. And yet, I did not contest it. Leadership is accepting the bruise even when you block the punch. Before the board adjourned, a request came in. Trent wanted to testify. Civilians rarely step into military rooms like that. But the colonel allowed it. Trent stood there in a plain shirt, hands by his sides, eyes level. Captain Williamson did not humiliate us, he said. She restrained us. She taught us in front of everyone that real strength is control. We came to prove a point. She proved a different one, and we deserved it. He looked straight at the panel. I recognized her from Silverhawk. I know what restraint means for people who have seen combat. What she did out there wasn't a show, it was a lesson. For us, for her brother. I watched the colonel study him. You believe you learned something, the colonel said. Yes, sir, Trent replied. I learned that when ego meets discipline, ego loses without anyone needing to bleed. The room was still as the board recessed. Hale leaned close to me and murmured, He just did you a service money can't buy. I nodded. Trent hadn't switched sides for popularity. He'd crossed over to the side where truth costs, but pays back with dignity. By the end of the week, the blowback hit Jake harder than any takedown I could have given him. The owner of his gym called me, politely, professionally, to inform me that Jake had been suspended indefinitely, not for losing, but for weaponizing the gym's name in a public feud, for dragging martial arts through a personal vendetta. Word spread fast in those circles. Jake Mitchell, the guy who tried to turn a dojo into a stage and got burned by his own spotlight. He lost clients. He lost students. He lost the fragile authority he had built around the myth of being the one who knew real combat. That night, Jake called me again. His voice was cracked down the middle. Jade, he said, I don't know how to put this back together. I need help. I stared at the phone. Help is easy when the person is a stranger. It is harder when it is blood-soaked in pride. I won't save you from the consequences, I said. But I'll show you a road out. If you walk it yourself. Silence. Then a slow breath. Tell me where to start. I looked at the hawk on my wrist, at the reminder that leadership means owning your calls and sometimes helping others own theirs. You start, I said, by sitting in a room where you do not speak. 6 months, with me, with my nitit. Learning respect under pressure. The next wave of controversy erupted when I refused to publicly shield Jake from his own fallout. Reporters asked me if I planned to stand up for family now that my brother's reputation was in freefall. I looked straight into the camera during a press conference and said, I will not intervene to erase consequences that he created himself. My role as a soldier is to take responsibility for my own actions. My brother must do the same. The backlash was immediate. Some viewers praised me for standing on principle, but others branded me as cold and unfeeling. Social media split into factions. One side saying I was heartless for letting my brother be destroyed. The other side calling it integrity. Hashtags appeared. cold captain versus hashtag respect Jade. I read comments that called me a traitor to family values, accusing me of choosing my uniform over my blood. But I also read messages from veterans and siblings of soldiers who said, "Thank you for showing that accountability doesn't stop at the family line." Jake saw the clips. He left me 3 angry voicemails, calling me stone-hearted, accusing me of abandoning him in public when I could have softened the blow. I deleted them. Not out of cruelty, but because I knew if I listened, I'd hear the boy he used to be, the one who laughed when I cried. And I'd feel the old ache of wanting his approval. Online, the storm only grew louder. I understood one truth. Leadership means being misunderstood, sometimes by the people you love most. While I refused to rescue Jake in public, I didn't abandon him privately. I called him after the dust settled and said, "There's another way forward, but it won't be easy. If you want to rebuild, you'll do it without cameras, without hashtags, without sympathy points." Jake scoffed. "What do you mean?" "You'll join the program I'm running with Trent, Respect Under Pressure," I said. "You'll train with kids who know more about resilience than you do. You'll learn to listen, not to speak. No shortcuts, no public redemption stories. If you want people to see a different man, you'll start by becoming one." There was a long pause. "You think I'm just going to let Trent of all people lecture me?" "It's not about Trent," I replied. "It's about you unlearning everything you think strength is. This isn't PR, Jake. It's a clean slate, but you have to earn it." He didn't answer, but I heard the faint sound of him breathing harder, as if the idea of being silent in front of others was the hardest fight he'd ever face. The first day of Respect Under Pressure felt heavier than any sparring match. We gathered a small group, 10 recruits, 5 teenagers from local shelters, and Jake. The exercises weren't about fighting. They were about listening under stress, about holding silence while someone read your insecurities aloud. Jake crumbled faster than I expected. During a drill where each participant shared the worst insult they had ever heard, Jake couldn't hold his tongue. He lashed out, saying, "You all think this is strength? Sitting here, listening to people trash you? I'd rather fight 100 rounds than sit through this." That's when Trent stepped in. "This is why you lost, Jake," he said calmly. "Because you think humiliation is something you can outrun by humiliating others. But the truth is, you carry it with you." Jake's eyes flared, but then something in his expression shifted. He confessed almost in a whisper why he had failed the Army's psychological tests years ago. "They said I had unresolved anger issues. They weren't wrong. Every time I got compared to Jade, every time someone called her stronger or smarter, I felt small, and I learned if I mocked her first, I wouldn't feel it." Hearing that out loud hurt, but I knew it was a step toward the truth. For once, Jake wasn't performing, he was unraveling. Later that night, I sat alone on the training mat, thinking about the years I had let Jake believe I was weak. Not because I was, but because I thought silence was the best way to keep peace. I let him build his identity around the illusion of being the strong one, while I quietly surpassed him in every way. Voiceover in my own mind. I thought staying quiet would heal old wounds. I thought letting him mock me without correction would make him feel bigger, safer. I was wrong. Silence doesn't heal. It festers. It feeds resentment like fuel to a slow fire. I realized I wasn't blameless in this dynamic. By never confronting him, I allowed his narrative to grow twisted, to become the lens through which he viewed both of us. Maybe the real lesson wasn't about combat or control. Maybe it was about the courage to speak the truth to those closest to you, even when it hurts. That night, I made a choice. I wouldn't stay quiet anymore. The turning point came 2 weeks later. Jake asked to see me in the empty training hall after the kids had left. He stood there, no phone in sight, no bravado. His voice was low. "Jade, I need to say this without anyone watching. I'm sorry, not just for Family Day, for years, for making you feel like you had to prove yourself to me when I should have been the one standing behind you." I stayed silent, letting him continue. His hands shook slightly. "I thought mocking you made me strong. I thought if I tore you down, I'd feel less like a failure. But watching you on that mat, watching you control yourself while I lost control, it broke me, and I needed it too." I felt the sting in my eyes, but didn't let tears fall. "Jake," I said, "an apology is a start, but it doesn't erase what you did, to me, to those kids who look up to us. If you want to make it right, you'll work for it." "What do you want me to do?" "You'll help me teach. 6 months. No fee. You'll work with kids who've been bullied. You'll show them how to stand tall without tearing anyone else down. If you can do that, I'll know you mean what you say. He nodded, no hesitation. Deal. For the first time, I saw my brother not as a rival, but as a man willing to grow. I chose to forgive, but not to forget. Forgiveness, I realized, isn't about wiping the slate clean. It's about building something new on the cracks. We launched Respect Under Pressure in a windowless, multi-purpose room that smelled like disinfectant and old canvas. Trent, Sergeant Hale, and I wrote the curriculum across 3 long weekends, arguing over verbs, tightening every sentence until it sounded like a command you could execute under fire. We settled on 22 principles, one for every year I have been fighting to master my own impulses, my own fear, my own need to win. Principle 1, control precedes power. Principle 2, accountability is a skill, not a sentence. Principle 3, pain is information. It does not grant you permission to pass it on. The list built from there, measured, practical, repeatable. We taught breath under pressure, posture when insult replaces dialogue, how to read the shoulder before the punch, how to speak in de-escalation tones even while your heart rate spikes. Hale handled the legal spine. UCMJ basics, use of force ladders, when to disengage and document. Trent translated combat mechanics for civilians, showing how leverage is math, not mythology. I led the drills where silence was mandatory, where eye contact was demanded, where respect was not a slogan, but a practice stance. No cameras, no applause. Every participant signed a contract that said, "You are here to be corrected, more than you are here to be praised." We did not promise catharsis. We promised work. Jake arrived on day 1, wearing a plain gray shirt, no gym logo, no swagger. I told him he would not teach. He would carry pads, reset mats, log attendance, and listen. He nodded. For the first week, he barely spoke. When a teenager dropped a focus mitt, Jake picked it up and wiped it clean without being asked. When a recruit froze during a verbal stress drill, he brought them water, then stepped back out of frame. The mop became a motif he could not escape. Every night he cleaned sweat from the floor he once tried to own with noise. I watched him learn humility through repetition. Not the dramatic kind that explodes in apologies, but the quiet kind that stacks chairs, folds guys, and leaves last. Some students did not know he was my brother. They just called him Mr. Mitchell and thanked him for taping their wrists before sparring. It was the first time I saw him useful without being loud. Resistance came, predictable as gravity. A coalition of traditional instructors published an open letter. The military is colonizing martial arts spaces, replacing philosophy with procedure. They accused us of teaching obedience instead of courage, paperwork instead of honor. Trent asked to answer publicly. I let him. In a town hall packed with practitioners, he stood at the mic and said, "We are not teaching submission to authority. We are teaching respect under pressure because we failed it in front of everyone. I was there. I threw my weight at a soldier who refused to hurt me back. She taught me that restraint is not passive. It is an advanced technique. If your art cannot coexist with accountability, your art is insecurity dressed in tradition." The room split. Some nodded. Some crossed their arms. A senior sensei challenged Trent. "What gives you the right to redefine respect?" Trent did not flinch. The fact that I disrespected it and learned why I was wrong. The debate spilled online. Articles, podcasts, panel invites. We declined the spotlight. The workshop kept running. People kept signing up. Arguments are loud. Transformation is quiet. 6 months in, Sergeant Hale compiled our first internal report. The numbers were not dramatic. They were disciplined. Incidents of uncontrolled sparring contact during civilian-military mixed sessions dropped by 42%. Reported verbal escalations inside the workshop decreased by 51% from month 1 to month 6. 3 separate bases requested our 22 principles and adapted them into their pre-deployment close quarters refreshers. 2 local gyms, run by instructors who initially criticized us, asked to audit the course. We let them on one condition: they had to take the drills before teaching them. Exit interviews from participants repeated the same phrase. I thought respect was a feeling. Now I understand it is a practice. The colonel who once reprimanded my discretion forwarded the report to command with a note. Recommend expansion. I read that line twice, not because I needed the validation, but because institutional pivots rarely come wrapped in single sentences. Jake read the report too. He circled the percentages, asked Hale about methodology, then stayed late to help graph the findings for the briefing deck. No one told him to. Progress is measurable when ego stops demanding a scoreboard. The spike was not viral, it was structural. That was the victory I wanted. I found the letter by accident, tucked under a stack of mitts in the storage room. His handwriting cramped and steady. He never meant to send it. Jade, it began. I do not want forgiveness. I want to deserve it. I used to think strength was getting the last word. You showed me strength as knowing when not to speak. Every time I mop this floor, I remember the day I tried to drag you onto it. You let me fall without letting me break. I resented you for years because you were calm when I was chaos. Now I am learning that calm is earned, rep by rep, breath by breath. I do not know if I can undo what I did. I only know I can outwork who I was. I folded the letter and left it where I found it. The next day I handed him a new mop handle. The old one had splintered. He looked at me, understood what I was saying without words, and nodded. Some apologies are meant to be heard. Others are meant to be lived. Jake had finally chosen the second kind. The legacy was not my clip, not my medals, not even Silver Hawk. It was this: a man learning respect the hard way and a sister finally letting him. 1 year later, Family Day returned to Fort Bragg, under the same banners, the same watchful cameras, and a quieter kind of anticipation. I opened a demo class for parents and new recruits. No dramatic challenge, no microphone grab taunts, just mats, notebooks, and the steady rhythm of disciplined breathing. Jake stood beside me, not at the center, not seeking an introduction. When a parent asked who he was, he answered with 6 words that needed no embellishment. Learn respect before you learn pain. Then he stepped back and handed a teenager a mouthguard, like it was a medal of patience. We led the group through Principle 1 to Principle 22, control before power, responsibility before pride, breath before reaction. Trent assisted, demonstrating how a minor adjustment in stance could prevent a major escalation. Sergeant Hale briefed the adults on why accountability protects everyone, not just the soldier wearing rank. The room carried a different kind of electricity than the year before, not excitement looking for spectacle, but attention searching for understanding. At the end, a mother approached me and said, I watched that video last year and thought it was about winning. Today I realize it was about restraint. I nodded, then watched Jake help a boy tie his belt correctly. No showmanship, no lecture, just deliberate fingers undoing and redoing until the knot held. This Family Day gave me something the last one never could, proof that change is possible when pride finally learns to listen. Jake did not need a title. He needed a role he could grow into without burning it down. He had one now. Before we dismissed the crowd, I asked for a few minutes to speak. I lifted my left wrist and rolled my sleeve, revealing the small hawk tattoo that used to whisper only to memory. You see this? I said, and you might think it represents victory. It does not. It represents the order I gave too early, the life I could not bring back, the lesson I will never allow myself to forget. The room fell silent in a way that felt respectful, not curious. Operation Silverhawk was called perfect in headlines, I continued. But perfection on paper does not cancel the names that never get printed. I was the commanding officer. I made the call. We saved 5. We lost 1. That math might look clean to those who were not there. It is not clean to me. I saw heads bow. I saw eyes study the floor. I saw recruits straighten their posture as if the weight of leadership suddenly pressed on their spines. This tattoo is not glory. It is accountability. It keeps me honest when the world wants to make me a hero. It reminds me to move with precision, to teach restraint, to practice respect. Because when you have carried one life too many on your conscience, you learn to value every ounce of control you can keep. I closed my fist over the hawk and took a breath. I am telling you this because winning is not immunity. Rank is not sainthood. Strength, if it is real, accepts the cost of its decisions and keeps choosing what is right. So when you train, when you fight, when you lead, do not chase glory, chase responsibility. It will keep you, and everyone who follows you, alive. After the crowd dispersed, Jake and I stood by the rolled-up mats, the room half lit, the smell of sweat and disinfectant still lingering. He looked like he wanted to say something, to offer another apology or ask for another way to make up for the years he could not undo. I stopped him with a small shake of my head. I do not need you to kneel, I said. I need you to stand, on the right side, consistently. His eyes filled, but he did not speak. He just nodded, slow and deliberate, like each inch of movement was a promise he was making to himself before making it to me. I did not forgive him because time passed. I forgave him because he finally chose work over excuses, service over performance, listening over noise. Some people want forgiveness to erase the past. I want it to build a future that does not repeat it. Jake understood. His silence was cleaner than any scripted apology. When he turned to stack the last set of focus mitts, I let myself breathe out something I had been holding for years. He was not my burden anymore. He was my brother again. Not because he said the right words, but because he stood where he needed to stand. I used to think justice was making someone fall. Now I know justice is standing up yourself and pulling them up too, if they are willing to rise. I did not beat my brother. I did not even strike him. I moved, I waited, I drew a boundary, and when he finally reached for it with both hands, I chose to take one and lift. Not because he deserved it by default, but because he earned it by work. If the story reached you, it is probably because you have your own version of Jake. Or maybe you are Jake, and you needed to hear that redemption is not a speech. It is a schedule you keep when no one is filming. Before we say goodbye, we would love to know, where are you watching from? Is it a quiet morning with a warm cup of coffee, or a late night where stories like this keep you company? Let us know in the comments. We read everyone with gratitude. And if this story touched your heart, please consider subscribing to the channel, not just to hear more stories like this, but to be part of a community that still believes in kindness, healing, and second chances. Thank you for spending your time with us today. Wherever you are, I hope you carry this story with you, and remember this. Sometimes the miracle does not knock on your door. It waits quietly until you are ready to open your heart. Take care. We will see you in the next story.